Sometimes, even the best intentions lead to the worst heartbreaks. Ty thought he could bring back Amy's smile. Just one small surprise to remind her of who they used to be. But at Heartland, love and fate have their own plans. And what begins as a moment of hope soon turns into a storm no one saw coming. The morning light creeps over the hills of Heartland, soft and golden, touching everything it meets. The fence posts, the empty corral, and the worn-out saddle leaning against the barn wall. The world feels peaceful, but beneath that calm, something heavy lingers. Amy walks slowly toward Spartan, her boots brushing against the dew-covered grass. Her movements are slower these days, her eyes duller, like someone carrying too many memories in her heart. It's been weeks since she's truly smiled. Not the polite kind she gives everyone else, but the real one that once lit up the ranch. Ty watches her from a distance. He knows her silence too well. It's the same silence she had after losing someone she loved, the same quiet pain that hides behind her steady hands when she brushes Spartan's mane. Ty feels it deep in his chest, that helpless ache of wanting to make things better, but not knowing how. He spent nights thinking, replaying every memory, searching for something, anything, that could bring her back to that light-hearted woman he fell in love with. Then it hits him, a memory from long ago. Their first ride together, back when everything felt simple and new. The laughter, the muddy boots, the sunset that seemed endless. Back then, all they needed was each other and a trail that led nowhere in particular. Ty decides that's what he'll do. He'll take her back there, to where it all began. Maybe if they retrace the path, they'll find the pieces of what they've lost. The plan forms quietly in his mind. He doesn't tell anyone, not even Amy. He wants it to be a surprise, something gentle, something meaningful. He starts early, fixing old gear, cleaning saddles, and checking trails that haven't been used in months. As he works, the smell of hay and dust fills the air. He can almost hear Amy's laughter again, echoing faintly in his memory. It gives him hope, a fragile kind, but hope nonetheless. Later, Ty stands at the barn door, watching the sky turn pale blue. Amy is out by the paddock, brushing Spartan's mane, her face half hidden by her hair. There's a distance between them that words can't seem to cross. Ty wants to bridge it with something more, not with speeches or promises, but with a gesture she never forget. He looks down at the old trail map in his hands. The paper is worn, creased from years of use, but the path is still there, winding through the valley, over the ridge, ending at the same riverbank where they once confessed their love. He folds the map, tucks it into his jacket, and whispers to himself, "We'll get there again." The wind carries his words away, blending them with the soft rustle of the trees. Somewhere deep down, he feels that familiar mix of fear and hope. Because at Heartland, surprises don't always go as planned. Ty wakes before dawn. The house is still quiet, the kind of stillness that only happens before a new day begins, fragile, untouched, and full of possibilities. He slips out of bed, careful not to wake Amy. The floorboards creak softly under his boots as he moves through the hall. For a moment, he pauses at the door, glancing back at her sleeping form. Her hand rests near the edge of the blanket, curled loosely, as if she's holding onto something invisible. That sight strengthens his resolve. Today, she'll bring her joy back, even if it's just for a moment. Outside, the air is cool and smells faintly of pine and earth. The morning fog clings low over the fields, and the horses stand quietly, their breath rising like smoke in the dim light. Ty pulls his jacket tighter and heads to the barn. Every sound seems louder in the silence. The soft clink of metal as he grabs the old bridle, the gentle thud of hooves shifting in their stalls. He runs his hand along Spartan's neck. The horse snickers softly, as if remembering. "Hey, old friend," Ty whispers, his voice low and tender. "You up for another adventure?" He spends hours preparing. The trail needs checking, parts of it haven't been used in years. He loads supplies into his truck, blankets, a small picnic basket, a thermos of coffee, and something special, a small wooden box with Amy's initials carved into it. Inside, he's placed something she hasn't seen in years, the silver bracelet she once lost during a storm on that very trail. He had found it months later, but kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment to return it. Today, he thinks that moment has come. The sun begins to rise, casting golden streaks over the ranch. Ty drives toward the ridge, the road winding through open pastures and narrow trails. The hum of the engine is the only sound. His mind drifts as he drives, memories flashing like old film reels. Amy's laughter echoing across the fields, her hair catching sunlight, her voice teasing him as Spartan outpaced his horse. Those were the days when everything felt infinite. When he reaches the clearing, the sight steals his breath. The valley stretches wide below, painted in shades of amber and green. The river glints like a ribbon of light. It's all exactly how he remembers, yet somehow lonelier. He gets to work, setting up the surprise. He ties a soft blue ribbon to a branch, Amy's favorite color, and places the wooden box beneath it. Then he leaves a folded note on the kitchen table back home, simple but heartfelt. Meet me where the sky touches the river. Follow the trail and don't look back. By the time Amy wakes, Ty is already gone. Jack notices the truck missing, but doesn't say anything. He's been around long enough to know that when Ty gets that look in his eyes, a mix of determination and love, there's no stopping him. Back at the ridge, Ty walks the path one last time, making sure it's safe. The grass is taller than he remembers, the earth softer from last night's rain. The trees whisper in the wind, their leaves flickering like tiny green flames. He stops by the riverbank and crouches down, running his hand through the water. It's cold, clear, and endlessly moving, like time itself. For a moment, he closes his eyes and smiles. Everything feels right, but far off. The wind shifts. A low rumble rolls across the sky. Ty looks up. Dark clouds are gathering on the horizon, crawling over the mountains faster than expected. He frowns, sensing something uneasy. The air thickens, heavy with the smell of rain. Still, he shakes his head, refusing to give in to doubt. It's just a little weather, he mutters, brushing dirt off his jeans. It'll pass. He takes one last look around, satisfied with every detail. The trail markers, the blanket near the river, the little box waiting beneath the tree. It's perfect, or at least he hopes it will be. With that, he heads back toward Heartland, the faint growl of thunder chasing him down the valley dot when he returns. Amy is by the barn, feeding Spartan. She looks up as he approaches, her eyes narrowing slightly, suspicion mixing with curiosity. Ty tries to hide his smile, pretending everything's normal, but his excitement gives him away. You're up early, she says. Yeah, he replies, leaning casually against the fence. Had a few things to check on. Amy tilts her head. You're acting weird, he laughs, brushing it off. Weird? Me? Never. She doesn't press further. But as he walks away, she notices something on the kitchen table, the note, folded neatly beside her coffee mug. She picks it up, her heart skipping a beat as she reads Ty's familiar handwriting. A smile tugs at her lips, soft and uncertain. She glances toward the hills, where the sky has begun to darken slightly, unaware of what's waiting beyond. Holding the note close, she whispers to herself, where the sky touches the river. And with that, Amy mounts Spartan and begins to ride toward the surprise that was meant to heal her heart. And the storm that would soon change everything. The wind had a strange chill that morning, the kind that hints something is about to change. The sky hung heavy with slow-moving clouds, dimming the usual glow that Heartland mornings carried. Amy tightened her grip on Spartan's reins as they trotted down the familiar path leading away from the ranch. The note Ty left replayed in her mind, each word soft but full of meaning. Meet me where the sky touches the river. There was a time when such words would have made her laugh and race ahead. But now they stirred something quieter, curiosity mixed with longing. As she rode, the world around her seemed to whisper memories. The creak of the saddle, the smell of the damp earth, the sound of Spartan's hooves striking the ground, everything pulled her back to the early days of her and Ty's love. Back when the ranch was their universe, and time seemed endless. Her heart softened at the thought, though it still carried the dull ache of everything that had changed. Back at Heartland, Ty was restless. He kept glancing at the clouds as he loaded tools into the truck bed. The weather forecast hadn't mentioned rain, but the darkening sky told a different story. He muttered to himself, half laughing, of course. It can't ever just go smoothly. He wiped his hands on his jeans and grabbed his jacket. There was still time, he thought. Amy would reach the ridge soon. He just needed to make sure everything was perfect before the rain hit. Jack watched from the porch, his weathered face creasing with concern. "You sure about this, Ty?" he called out. "That sky's got trouble written all over it." Ty smiled, trying to sound confident. "It's fine, Jack. It's just a little rain. Besides, Amy deserves something special." Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, but special don't mean dangerous. Don't let that storm outsmart you." Ty nodded, but the whirring lingered. As he drove off toward the ridge, the first low rumble of thunder rolled across the valley, long and distant. Meanwhile, Amy reached the start of the old trail. It had been years since she'd been here. The wooden post with the faded carving of a heart, their initials still visible, stood like a quiet reminder of everything they'd once shared. She smiled softly, brushing her fingers against the rough surface before nudging Spartan forward. The path was narrower than she remembered. Wildflowers had grown tall along the edges, and the air smelled of rain-soaked pine. She could almost hear Ty's voice in her head, teasing her about always riding too fast. Warning her to take it easy on the corners, she smiled at the thought. But as the wind began to pick up, that warmth started to fade. A cool drizzle began to fall. Gentle at first, dotting Spartan's mane. Amy pulled her jacket tighter. The trail sloped upward toward the ridge, and with each step, the wind grew stronger. Leaves danced wildly in the air, spinning and scattering like a warning. Still, she pressed on, believing Ty wouldn't have sent her this way if it wasn't safe. Back at the riverbank, Ty worked quickly. The blue ribbon fluttered in the wind, threatening to come loose. He knelt to tie it tighter, his fingers trembling slightly from the cold. The basket sat neatly on the blanket, the little wooden box resting in its center. Everything was ready, yet his heart wouldn't settle. Something about the air, thick, electric, made him uneasy. He looked toward the ridge and saw flashes of gray sky deepening to black. He grabbed his phone to call Amy, but the signal flickered. Static filled the line. "Come on," he muttered, pacing near the truck. Another rumble of thunder shook the ground. The first drops of real rain began to fall, slow, heavy, deliberate. Ty's chest tightened. "No," he whispered, more to himself than to the sky. "Not now." Amy, now halfway up the ridge, felt Spartan tense beneath her. The horse's ears flicked back, nostrils flaring. "Easy, boy," she said softly, patting his neck. The wind howled through the trees, bending the branches until they creaked like old bones. Lightning flashed somewhere behind the hills, lighting up the path for a brief, haunting moment. She thought of turning back, but then she remembered the note. Ty had asked her to trust him. He wouldn't have led her into danger, not Ty. So she pressed on, her heart pounding with both fear and hope. At the same time, Ty started toward the trail on foot, shouting over the rising wind. "Amy," his voice echoed through the valley, lost to the storm. He ran faster, boots slipping in the mud, rain stinging his face. The ribbon he'd tied earlier had come loose, fluttering away into the wind. Up ahead, Amy finally saw the glint of something blue between the trees, the ribbon, the sign she was close. Relief washed through her, but it lasted only a moment. A sudden crack of thunder tore through the air, and Spartan reared back, spooked. Amy's hands slipped, her balance gone. For a heartbeat, everything froze, the rain suspended in the air, the world silent except for her gasp. Then Spartan bolted. Amy's cry vanished into the roar of the wind. Down below, Ty froze mid-stride. His eyes widened as he heard the faint echo of her voice carried through the storm. He dropped everything and ran toward the ridge, his heart hammering, knowing now this wasn't just a little rain. This was the beginning of something far worse. The storm had arrived without mercy. What began as a soft drizzle was now a roaring curtain of rain, slashing sideways across the valley. The wind howled through the trees, bending branches until they cracked and fell, echoing like distant gunshots. The once familiar trail had turned to mud, swallowing hooves and boots alike. Heartland had always seen storms, but this one felt different, angry, untamed, and cruelly timed. Amy clung to Spartan's reins, her hair plastered against her face, her eyes stinging from the rain. "Whoa, easy, boy, easy," she shouted, but her voice was lost in the thunder's roar. Spartan stumbled, terrified, slipping on the wet ground. Amy's heart raced as she tried to steady him, but another flash of lightning split the sky, bright and blinding. Spartan reared again, front hooves slicing the air. Amy barely had time to react before she felt her body lift from the saddle. The world spun, rain, sky, mud, and fear blending into one blur. Then, with a hard thud, she hit the ground. The breath was knocked from her lungs, her vision dimming for a moment. Pain shot through her shoulder as she rolled onto her side, gasping, her hands digging into the wet earth. Somewhere nearby, Spartan neighed wildly and bolted down the trail, vanishing into the rain-soaked trees. For a few long seconds, there was only the storm, the sound of pounding rain, the weight of cold mud against her palms. Amy pushed herself up, wincing. "Spartan!" she cried, her voice breaking. No answer, just the relentless wind. Fear clawed at her chest. She was alone. The trail was barely visible, washed out by water rushing downhill. She tried to stand but stumbled, her ankle twisting painfully beneath her. Still, she forced herself upright, her body trembling but her will unbroken. Down in the valley, Ty was already halfway up the trail, running through mud that pulled at his boots with every step. The rain drenched him completely, his breath ragged as he fought the climb. His eyes scanned the ridge through the haze, searching for any sign of Amy or Spartan. Every thunderclap made his heart jolt. He shouted again, his voice raw. "Amy, can you hear me?" A faint sound answered, not words, but something softer. A cry. It was her. Ty's pulse quickened. He followed the sound, slipping and stumbling as the ground turned to a river beneath him. Branches tore at his jacket, mud splattered his face, but he didn't stop. Not for a second. When he found her, she was kneeling beside a fallen log, clutching her ankle and shaking from the cold. Relief and panic hit him all at once. "Amy," he called, sprinting toward her. She looked up, her eyes wide, her face streaked with rain and tears. "Ty Spartan," he ran off. "I couldn't forget Spartan right now," Ty said firmly, crouching beside her. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," she lied, her voice trembling. "It's just my ankle." He looked around, the sky blackened, lightning flickering across the horizon. The river near the ridge had swelled, rushing faster and higher than before. The sound of it was deafening. Ty knew they couldn't stay there. "We have to get back to the truck before this gets worse," he said, helping her up. She tried to stand but winced sharply, nearly falling again. Ty caught her, his arm steady around her shoulders. "Lean on me," he said. "We'll take it slow." They began moving down the trail, step by step, the rain battering their faces. Every few moments, Amy would glance back toward the ridge, her heart breaking for Spartan. But each time Ty would squeeze her hand gently, a silent promise that they'd find him later. Right now, survival came first. Halfway down, a low rumble grew louder. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Ty looked up. The river that wound through the valley had burst its banks, sending a surge of muddy water cascading toward the lower path. "Move," he shouted, pulling Amy with him. They stumbled to higher ground just as the torrent rushed past, swallowing the trail they'd been standing on seconds earlier. For a moment, they stood there, soaked and breathless, staring at the chaos below. Amy's lips trembled. "It's all ruin, isn't it?" she said softly, her voice breaking. "Everything you planned?" Ty looked at her, her face pale but determined, her eyes glistening through the rain, and something inside him softened. "Plans don't matter," he said quietly. "You do." She opened her mouth to reply, but another flash of lightning split the sky, followed by a sharp crack. A tree struck and falling fast. Ty pushed Amy away just as it crashed beside them, spraying mud and water into the air. He shielded her, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. When the noise settled, the two of them stood frozen, breathing hard, clinging to each other. Finally, Tai whispered, "We need to get out of here." He helped her down the rest of the trail, both of them limping, shivering, and soaked to the bone. When they reached the truck, Tai grabbed the blanket from the seat and wrapped it around her. The storm still raged outside, but inside that small space, a fragile calm began to return. Amy looked at him, eyes filled with emotion, fear, relief, love, all tangled together. "Tai," she said quietly, her voice cracking, "you don't have to fix me. You just have to be here." He swallowed hard, nodding. "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the rain began to soften. The valley lay bruised and broken beneath the storm's retreat. The surprise had ended in disaster, but in that wreckage, something unspoken had survived. The simple truth that love isn't about perfect plans. It's about staying when everything else falls apart.